So now let's take a close look at creating CRM 2011 global option sets. A global or shared option set allows us to create a pick list that can be used by a number of different attributes in different entities or the same entity in CRM. If you'll notice on the slide here that we're in the solution, the default solution, and there's actually an option set tab. This shows us all of the option sets, in this case, all of the ones out of the box from CRM. When we drill down and double-click on an option set, it brings up an example of a self-contained option set. Category, which is the categories for connection roles. And you can see the schema name is locked and grayed out. And so what we see on this slide is the 5 different options. And in this particular case, we've clicked on social and we can see both the label and the numeric value that's stored inside. Global option sets can be referenced by multiple attributes, and it ensures consistent data in all the attributes. It reduces the maintenance to a single place. If I want to add more options to an option set, I just go into the global option set and add it, and immediately, once that's published, all the entities that access that option set now have these new values. It's very helpful to maintain the mapping consistency that we need, and we'll get into data mapping later, but in effect, when I want to go and promote a lead to an account, if I want to copy data from the lead into that account and it happens to be an option set, then the option sets must be in sync. A global option set is an excellent way to accomplish this. This has not been implemented in legacy entities of CRM, so the lead, contact, and account all have independent option sets rather than shared option sets at this time. You might want to consider to replace this if you're putting in a new organization and you're customizing a customer type code or a payment method or an industry code, and you want to make sure it matches in every instance you use it. This would be an excellent example of why I would create a shared option set and put it in place to replace out-of-the-box attributes. So now let's do a demonstration of how we create an option set and then how we access it from within an attribute. Now I'd like to demonstrate how we create an option set and then use a different method to create a field, so you've seen another way to get in. So first we go to Settings. In this particular case, we're going to go ahead and customize the system rather than doing this through a solution. And I come down to Option Sets, and we have a list of customizable option sets. We also could be looking at custom option sets, or we could be looking at all option sets. In this particular case, we're going to go to Custom, and we're going to create a new custom option set. What I'm going to create is an option set that I can use for my customers and my leads that will be consistent between the two. We'll call this Customer Segment or Business Segment. And you'll notice after I type in the display name, it went ahead and defaulted to a full name. I can put in a description to explain this, but at this point now I can create a label after I have saved it the first time. And so now I can click on plus, and you'll notice that it's put item and a starting value in here. So now I can do the business segment of segment A, and I can also go back and change when I misspell, as so. And if you'll notice, it's auto numbering and moving the values on forward. So now I've created my 3 segments, and I have actually created one extra, which we'll get to in a second. I have the ability now to go and create another one and insert it in the list. Now, I don't want to go back and change any of the numbers, because if you change the numbers, then it can have a profound effect on the data that's already out there. So that's not such a good idea. But on the other hand, if I need this to be segment C, and then I want to move it up a little bit, then at this point, even though this ends in 0, 1, 3, and then 2, I can order them separately. And this is the order in which it will appear when it is out in use in an attribute somewhere on a form. Okay, so now we've created it. So I do want to save my changes, and I want to publish this to make it available. Anytime I make changes to an option set, it does need to be republished, so that's a thing to keep in mind. Basically, if you see the publish button, it means you should probably publish before you try and use it. All right, so we'll save and close. Now at this point, what I want to do is very quickly, within my default solution, go down and update the account and add this attribute to the account. So I open account, I open the drop-down list, I come down to fields, and this is another way that I can create a new field. Now notice I can give this its own display name, even though I'm referencing an option set that might have a different name. I can also choose to make this required if I so want. And finally, I can come down here and say, okay, I want this to be an option set. And in this particular case, I want to use an existing one. Now, if I chose to use an existing option set, this box down here that lets me set up my options within the data element itself go away. However, I have the ability now to go ahead and look up what's out there and reuse it. So in this particular case, we had business segment. I can select that. And now at this point, independently, in each attribute I use this, I can choose a different default. So we can assume that this would be segment A. And then if we want to force them to enter a value, then we leave it as an unassigned value. Okay, so that's all there is to it. And I can save and close, and I've now created my new field, and I've referenced it to a shared option set, which will make life easier for me in a number of different ways, including mapping. All right, in this particular case, I'm not going to add this to a form for a demonstration that we're going to do a little bit later. Deleting custom attributes. You can delete attributes, but there are some restrictions. First of all, you cannot delete a system or customizable attribute. In other words, if it's an out-of-box attribute, you can't get rid of it. You can only drop it from the form. You also are not able to delete attributes that come as part of a managed solution. Finally, any attribute that has a dependency, in other words, if it's still being used in a form or a view, or if it's used in a workflow or dialogue, then it has a dependency that will prevent you from being able to delete it. You can use the attribute dependency options to locate where a particular attribute is used. Remove the dependencies, but you must publish all the above changes before you will be able to delete the attribute, because publishing does actually remove it from the forms that the end users are seeing. When you're deleting an attribute, you should be aware that SQL immediately drops the column in the database, so all data is permanently erased before you get the screen back. There is no recovery other than to restore a backup of a CRM database. So be cautious when deleting attributes. Make sure you really don't need that data anymore. So let's go through the process of deleting an attribute. Now I'd like to demonstrate the process of removing a field that we have previously created. Now remember, you can only delete a custom attribute that doesn't have any dependencies on it. So in this particular case, what we're first going to do is go out and show you how to do a simple delete. It's very easy. First, we want to go find the custom attributes that we've created within the entity in earlier demonstrations. The alternate web URL is on a form. The new business segment is not. So if I was to go take a look at more actions and show dependencies, there are no dependent components on the business segment. I can just go ahead and delete it, and it will let me do that without any problem. After I've deleted this, I could go back and delete the option set that I created because I just got rid of its dependency. But let's talk about what happens when we attempt to delete something that has a dependency. If I try and delete this, it's going to ask me to confirm it. But because it's on a form, and that form has been published, it's going to tell me that it cannot delete the component. This is an interlock that's created within CRM that's going to make it easier for you to keep up with what cannot be removed from your application. On the other hand, you may find it a little frustrating from time to time because you're going to try and get rid of things that still exist on forms or views, and they must be gotten rid of first. So let's go through the process. First of all, we can go ahead and show dependencies. And it says, aha, well, this is on the form. So I can double click on the dependency. I can go to the form. And I can remove the field from the form. Now, if I just save and close at this point, I will still not be able to delete this attribute. And the reason for that is, even though I made my change, what I did not do was go get rid of the dependency. So if I go and show the dependencies, I still have a dependency out there. And the reason that I have the dependency out there is because while I removed it from the form, I did not publish. So now if I go back and publish, this will drop it from the form. Understand the reason for this interlock. If I've published a form, then that means that that change has been published to all users. But if I haven't published a form, even though I can see the change, the users are still using the form as of the last time it was published and have access to the data element. Then that means that we're in a situation where the system is smart enough to know that even though I can't see it on the form in the form designer, I am able to protect from making the mistake of not publishing it first. So now that I have published, if I refresh my dependencies, the dependency is gone. And now at this point, one of my actions can be to go ahead and delete the new attribute. CRM 2011 resources. So as usual, the SDK is a great place to get additional information, although it's somewhat sparse when it comes to information about attribute configuration using the UI. I've found that the two following books are very helpful: Working with Microsoft Dynamics CRM 2011 by Microsoft Press, and Microsoft Dynamics CRM 2011 Administration Bible, published by Wiley. Also, a good place to go in general is the Microsoft CRM team blog, and subscribe, because I find I learn an awful lot just from being on the subscription list for that. When I have questions, I go to the Microsoft CRM forums. Anyway, that's it for our segment today. I hope it was helpful.